Well, in Australia, we have a culture or an underlying culture that comes from the driving network within this country, and it's a negative view towards cyclists, and in some cases you could even claim it, inverted brackets, hatred towards cyclists. Now, I did do a video some time back about Mike Hall and the death of Mike Hall on the Monaro Highway when he was riding in the Indian Pacific wheel race, and the video was about the coroner's response to what actually happened. And you can see that there's significant bias from that coroner towards Mike Hall and what he should have done to protect himself, not that a driver ran into the back of him. Well, let's roll that intro and let's have a look at a case that has just recently happened in South Australia, and we can see that same theme and thread happening. Now, in this particular case, the rider or the cyclist had a camera facing backwards, and that camera did record a lot of the event, but unfortunately it was heavily raining, so some of the footage is quite hard to make out clearly because the water on the lens and the headlights from the car kind of distorts the image. But you can see that the car has come very, very close, and the bicycle, or the three bicycles involved, were pushed off the road. Now, the rider or the riders, should I say, who were being pushed off the road, say that they actually saw the car and it was coming the opposite way. And what it did is it actually did a U-turn in the refuge that was in the middle of the road and then came up behind them. And even though they were actually riding on the shoulder of the road where there's a white line and there's a shoulder between the edge of the road and the white line, they were riding in that space, which we normally call a cycle lane, even though officially they're not classed as cycle lanes. But for the benefit of this video and what most people believe and drivers believe, they do see that as a cycle lane. So these three riders were riding in the cycle lane in poor weather, and they had the cameras on, their lights on, and everything like that. And this vehicle came up to them and actually came right behind them into the cycle lane and basically pushed them and even hit them and pushed them off the road. There was no injuries done, but the intent of the driver was to either push them off the road or to cause harm. Now, I'll just read from the article here. The event happened on August the 5th last year, and it happened on the Lady Gowrie Drive at 6:30 a.m. to 7 a.m. in the morning. And at the time, the driver just drove off, and the police then tracked down the guy, who was a 25-year-old male, and he was going to be charged. The police were going to bring charges against him for dangerous driving because what he had done to these cyclists. But what actually happened is, when it got to court, the police retracted all of the charges, so this 25-year-old got no charges whatsoever, which was very, very strange. And to me, it just heightens the fact that drivers can get away with a lot more behaviour or negative behaviour towards cyclists than, say, a driver to another driver. It's almost like cyclists they're a vehicle that's allowed on the road, but they're like a B-class citizen on the road, or a B-class vehicle on the road. And a lot of drivers have that perception. They go, cyclists shouldn't be on the road holding up traffic. They should be riding on the footpath or in a cycle lane or somewhere, as long as they're out of my way and they're off the road, because they're holding up traffic and they're a hazard. And they even argue that the cyclists are dangerous. Now, I've done videos on this before, but it's like a reverse psychology. They're saying that them being on the road is making it dangerous for themselves, even though they're the vehicle that's going to hit them and kill them. So it's a bit of a kind of a victim blaming to the cyclist. And instead of respecting the cyclist and waiting for that cyclist when there's a gap so they can move into the next lane, or there's even laws here in Australia where you can actually cross a solid white line to pass the cyclist, they don't care. They're not willing to be patient or wait to pass that cyclist. Now, I'm not saying that every cyclist is an angel. I've seen cyclists do some quite stupid stuff. And of course, they've broken the law, and the law applies to them as well. And if they get seen by the police, they can be given a ticket or arrested, just like a driver can, for breaking the road laws as well. But drivers seem to have this perception that they have more right to the road because they pay registration or whatever idea they've got in their head, and that cyclist shouldn't be there because they're not paying registration and they're just a hazard. And some people have such a strong view about this that they're willing to actually try and push cyclists off the road and endanger their life in doing so.
Charges dismissed.
Now, these sorts of incidences aren't really that uncommon. There was actually a four-wheel drive that was in the West Australian hills here, and some cyclists were riding up the hill, up the road, and this vehicle was actually going down the road. And the vehicle actually stopped and put their vehicle into reverse and tried to reverse their vehicle into the cyclist. Because they weren't so good at reversing, they missed the cyclist. But I do believe that that driver was actually fined. So in that case, there was some justice. But this is the kind of behaviour that we're seeing. It's not that someone's just beeping you or probably a little bit annoyed. They're actually taking dangerous action that could injure you or even kill you. And they think that is okay. And this is really an ongoing problem that we have in a lot of countries. Australia is like this. It's like whenever a cyclist is killed and this goes on the news, you can just see it on a lot of these social media apps. There's hundreds of comments, and most of those comments are pretty hate comments towards cyclists. So guys, leave your comments down below, because this kind of thing I think is disgusting, and we should be respecting all road users, and bicycles have a legal right to be on the road. Here in WA, they're in the road traffic code, and they are a legal vehicle, just like a car. Registration means nothing. They're allowed to be on the road. And I think that in different countries, those rules do vary. But what I would like from you guys, what's your country like? Is your country pretty accommodating to cyclists, or do they have this really negative attitude like we have in Australia? It's pretty sad, I do think. And guys, remember, I've also got another channel that features Lotus cars and how to capture pictures of your car if you're into that sort of thing. So go check that channel out, and it's called Waynos Fotos Lotus Cars. And guys, that's where I'm going to leave it, and I will see you next vid.